Greetings, guitar fanatics. I'm Charlie Long, and today I'm going to show you how to breathe life into your tired old blues licks by applying a little music theory and incorporating some awesome arpeggio ideas. So let's get going. You know, it seems like blues music and guitar go together like peanut butter and chocolate or chicken and waffles. It's such a great fit. It's so fun to play and just wail over. But sometimes it's easy to take a very narrow view of what blues music can be. And as a guitarist starts to develop more theory knowledge and technique, they might start to see the blues as being overly simple and maybe even boring. Well, with what I'm going to teach you here today, you might start to see the blues in an entirely new way. And you're going to have a totally new set of tools to use when you play it. Let's start with a little bit of music theory that's actually huge in its application, but I don't hear it talked about very much. Now here's the gold. Would you believe me if I told you that a blues in A is actually in 3 different keys? It's in the key of D, G, and A. Well, okay, Charlie, well, how can that be? Well, let's think about this. A typical 12-bar blues is played with 3 chords. A blues that we would say is in the key of A has A7, which if I'm out at a blues jam, we would call that the 1 chord, D7, which we would call the 4 chord, and E7, which we would call the 5 chord. But here's the thing. If we go through the chords in a major key, there's only one dominant chord in a key. The 1 chord in a major key is actually a major 7. The 2 and the 3 chords are minor 7. The 4 chord's a major 7. The 5th chord is a dominant 7. The 6th chord is a minor 7. And the 7th chord is a minor 7 flat 5. So in the key of A, we've got the notes A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, and G sharp. And that would give us the chords A major 7, B minor 7, C sharp minor 7, D major 7, E7, F sharp minor 7, and G sharp minor 7 flat 5. Well, there's a shocker. There's no A dominant 7 chord in the key of A. There's no D7 chord in the key of A. The dominant 7 chord in the key of A is actually E7, which means the only time a blues in A is actually in the key of A is the 2 measures where we play an E7 chord. Well, this is a conundrum. Where do the A7 and D7 chords come from? Well, a dominant 7 chord is always the 5th chord in a key. It just so happens that A7 is the 5th chord in the key of D, and D7 is the 5th chord in the key of G. So at this point, you might be thinking, so a blues in A is actually in D, G, and A? Well, this is all confusing and terrible. But what I want you to be thinking is, wow, this is an incredible opportunity. Because the fact is, we're going to be able to use the arpeggios from each of those 3 keys to add some really cool sounds to our blues licks. See, blues doesn't have to be just minor pentatonic licks of what we call the 1 chord over the entire progression. Of course that sounds great, and we always want to have a nice library of stock blues licks that we can draw from. But the blues can also be a whole lot more. Let me show you how. Now let's start by exploring that 1 chord, or A7. Now remember we said A7 is the 5 chord of the key of D major. A7 has the notes A, C sharp, E, and G. If we look at the chords in the key of D, A would be an A7, C sharp would be C sharp minor 7 flat 5, E would be E minor 7, and G would be G major 7. So here's our concept. We're going to take the 4 notes of the A7 chord. We're going to look at the home key of A7, which is D. We're going to identify the chords that match up with each note of the A7 chord, and we're going to use those 4 arpeggios to make up licks when we're soloing over that A7. Check this out. Here's each of those arpeggios played over an A7 chord. Here's A7 over A7. Here's C sharp minor 7 flat 5 over A7. Here's E minor 7 over A7. And here's G major 7 over A7. I think these arpeggios sound amazing over that A7 chord. And yeah, it's a little different, a little jazzier than what we're used to. But like I said earlier, it's really easy to take a limited view of what the blues should be. I know this is going to make somebody mad, but not every blues solo has to be made up of the same 6 Albert King or Stevie Ray Vaughan licks. Okay, that's enough with theory. Let's start building some guitar licks. The key with making something a little out of the ordinary like this sound good is always going to be in how you resolve your idea from what's slightly different back to what's familiar to the ear. Now, if we're playing the blues, that means we're going to have to bring it back to something bluesy. This means we're always going to be looking for ways to combine our new arpeggios with maybe the minor pentatonic scale or some blues licks that we already know. So let's start off with the A7 arpeggio over the A7 chord. Now, a dominant 7 arpeggio is very major sounding. And we could say that the sound of the blues is mixing major and minor tonalities. So how will we do that? Well, let's take this A7 arpeggio shape at the 5th position. We've got G and A at frets 5 and 7 of the D string, C sharp, and that's the major third of A at the 6th fret of the G string, E and G at the 5th and 8th frets of the B string, and A and C sharp at frets 5 and 9 of our high E. Sounds cool, but doesn't really sound like the blues yet. But what if we mix in the minor third or C natural? We could play that A7 arpeggio up to the A on the high E and then add in the C natural before playing the C sharp. Now, with just that little bit of chromaticism, I can already hear the major-minor push-pull of the blues. Let's play back down A, G, E, and D, but let's hit that C natural at the 5th fret before playing the C sharp again, and then A and G. Here's the whole thing. Now we got a pretty legit sounding blues lick where we're playing an A7 arpeggio, but we're mixing in that minor third to make it sound a little greasier, as I call it. And now here's something even more awesome. We can take that same lick and just transpose it to make it work over the D7 and E7 chords. Because remember, each of those chords is from its own key, and we can use the arpeggios of those keys over the D7 and E7 respectively. Listen to how you can really hear the tonality of the chords mixed in with some bluesiness as I play through them. Now here's A7, D7, back to A7, E7, D7, and back home to A. Now that's really awesome, and we're going to be using that transposing trick for all the arpeggios that we try today. Back to our lick. Let's play up the arpeggio, adding in the C natural on that high E. Descend down to the E on the B string. Now let's throw in a little sequencing. We're going to go back to the A on the high E string, and we're going to descend through the A minor pentatonic scale from A to D at the 7th fret of the G string. So we've got A, G, E, D. We're going to go back to the G at the 8th fret of the B string and descend A minor pentatonic to the A at the 7th fret of the D string. So we've got G, E, D, C, and A. And then we're going to play the D and the A on the 7th frets of the G and D string, C and C sharp at frets 5 and 6 of the G string, and then back to A at fret 7 of the D string. We're going to hold that note for a moment and then pull off to the G at fret 5. Here's that entire lick. And if we play with the timing some and play triplets up the arpeggio, slow it down a little, and then pick the pace back up for the pentatonic sequences. Well, now we've got something that sounds like Joe Bonamassa. Pretty awesome. And remember, that will work over all three chords if you just move it around to the right spots. Okay, next arpeggio. We're going to skip over the C sharp minor 7 flat 5 for now and go to the E note, which, if you'll remember, is associated with the E minor 7 chord in the key of D, which is the home key for A7. So here's a useful E minor 7 shape in the 7th position. We've got D and E at fret 7 and 9 of the G string, G at fret 8 of the B string, and B and D at fret 7 and 10 of the high E. What if we were to ascend through that arpeggio and then shift down and play the A7 arpeggio we just learned? Now let's add in the D note at fret 7 of the G string, then play C and C sharp, and then A and G at frets 7 and 5 of the D string. So that A7 arpeggio would then be... Here's our whole lick. One more time. Let's try our little test of transposing it and playing the same patterns over E7 and D7. Over E7, we'd have B minor 7 to E7. Over D7, we'd have A minor 7 to D7. Again, it works beautifully. Now keep in mind, we're only going to have time to explore a few arpeggio shapes, or this video would be 5 hours long. I want to give you a foundation in theory, and then enough examples so that you've got the tools to take this stuff and go out and use it on your own. Okay, next arpeggio. Let's go back to the arpeggio built off the C sharp note in our A7 chord. And in the key of D, that would be C sharp minor 7 flat 5. Keeping everything close to that 5th fret A area, there's a cool shape starting with C sharp at the 4th fret of the A string. We've got an E at fret 7 of the A string, G at fret 5 of the D string, B and C sharp at frets 4 and 6 of the G string, E at fret 5 of the B string, and then G and B at frets 3 and 7 of the high E. Now, let's combine that shape with our A7 blues lick. We're going to ascend through C sharp minor 7 flat 5, and then descend A, G, E, D, C sharp, A, and G. That sounds really slick. Now, let's try our 3-chord transposing test. E7, we would have G sharp minor 7 flat 5 to E7. D7, we'd have F sharp minor 7 flat 5 to D7. And then back down, C sharp minor 7 flat 5 to A7. All those to me sound really awesome. What if we went really crazy and made up a lick using the C sharp minor 7 flat 5 and the E minor 7, and then resolved it into something bluesy over that A? Well, let's give it a try. Let's play a 5-note C sharp minor 7 flat 5 shape with B and C sharp on the G string, E at fret 5 of the B, G and B at frets 3 and 7 of the E string, then slide up to the 10th fret of the E string, and now we're going to descend through the E minor 7 arpeggio with D and B at frets 10 and 7 of the E string, G at fret 8 of the B string, and then E and D at frets 9 and 7 of our G string. And that puts us in a great spot to then descend through our A7-ish bluesy lick. it sounds very slick, very sophisticated, and yet we bring it home with that major minor push-pull blues thing. Let's do one more arpeggio type. The fourth note in an A7 chord is a G. Now in the key of D, where A7 comes from, the chord that is built off of G is G major 7. We can play a cool G major 7 shape starting at the F sharp and G on frets 4 and 5 of the D string, B and D at frets 4 and 7 of the G string. And that little shape repeats at frets 7 and 8 of the B string and frets 7 and 10 of the high E. And that puts us in a perfect position to play down the A7 bluesy lick that we've been using. Or we could even tag it with that Bonamassa-like sequence. Now, just to have some fun, what if we make up a little lick that uses all 4 of the arpeggios built off the notes of that A7 chord? We're going to play some very useful arpeggio shapes on the G, B, and E strings. We're going to start with C sharp minor 7 flat 5. We're going to play frets 4 and 6 on the G string, fret 5 on the E string, 3 and 7 on the high E. E minor 7, we're going to slide up to fret 10 and play 10 and 7 on the E string, 8 on the B string, and 9 and 7 on our G string. Now for G major 7, we're going to slide up to fret 14. We're going to play frets 14 and 10 on the E string, 12 on the B string, and then 12 and 11 on our G string. For A7, we're going to play frets 15 and 12 on the E string, 14 on the B string, and then 14 and 12 on our G string. Here's our arpeggios. And now we're right up here around the 14th fret. That's F sharp minor pentatonic, A major pentatonic, and we can be in a perfect spot to finish off with something bluesy. All right, let's play all these ideas over a 12-bar blues in A and see if we can't come up with something kind of tasty. Now keep in mind, I'm not trying to do a great blues improv here. I'm trying to show you how the concepts work in this situation. Let's go. Now, we're obviously only scratching the surface of this topic. There are so many arpeggio shapes and places to play them all over the neck of the guitar. And the possibilities are infinite if you add in the pentatonic scales and all the blues licks we know. So it's going to be on you guys to take this information and run with it. But if you like this concept, let me know. We can explore it further. And if you like the video, give me a like and subscribe to the channel. We're putting out more great guitar stuff every week. And like I always say, work hard, play hard, have fun, and never stop learning. See you next time.